Hello and welcome on in, everybody. Good to see ya for another Photoshop challenge today. What's up, Sean? What's up, Susan? General Kenobi, good to see ya. Jennifer, Robert, who else we got? I know I saw some more names in here. Annika, Afrosia, welcome on in, everybody. Hello, Jean. Hey, everybody. Well, my name is Sam Peterson, and I am your host for today's Photoshop challenge, and we are doing caricature for beginners. So if you haven't done this before, basically we're going to be jumping into the liquify tool, everyone's favorite tool, and going over some basic tips and techniques that we can use to create some fun caricatures, some fun distorted portraits, and even try to give those like a stylized and artistic look if that's what you want to do. So definitely feel free to use your own images, take these challenges in whatever direction you would like to, but if you want to use the file that I'm going to be using, you can jump on in here and get a starter file by going down to the description below. There should be a link for a starter file. It's going to have the same assets I'm using, so you can just follow along directly. Or of course, like I said, if you want to use your own photos, that's great too. So what I'm going to be doing first off is just showing you the liquify tool. So to get to the liquify tool, first what I want to do is I always want to create a smart object. So I'm going to right click my layer. We're going to use this portrait first. We have two portraits here. And it's a good thing to hide my asset folder. If you're using the starter file, there's an asset folder. So make sure to hide that or you won't see the effects. But I have this portrait and this one. So I'm going to right click portrait number 1, which is what I named this, and do convert to smart object. And then we're going to go up to filter and go down to liquify. So from here, you can zoom in with this little zoom tool. You can hold on Alt or Option if you need to zoom out. But let me zoom in close enough so you can kind of see what we're working with here. You can pan with spacebar. I'm going to go ahead and select this face tool. So from here, you can see a lot of these little controls pop up for various areas of the face. You got like one for the jaw. You can make the jaw wider or more narrow. Same with the chin. You can bring that up or down. And then we have the forehead slider here as well. So these are like all the head controls. You'll also notice these movements are corresponding with all the sliders off to the right. So if you prefer, you could actually slide these. This is for the smile. I like to kind of manipulate the face directly, but mouth width, you could slide that down. Whatever you're more comfortable with. So I'm just going to play around with these. We can edit the mouth, each lip individually. You can actually kind of control the smile through these little slider toggles. You'll see that near the eyes too, so you can kind of slant them slightly. I'm going to go for max eye size here. There's a few different little controls. You can kind of make them wider, more narrow, but again, let's just max all this out. We'll go with a little bit of a downward slant. Kind of that alien look I'm going for. The nose you can grab too. You'll see this little 4-way arrow. You can kind of warp it around in this way. Same with the eye, when you see that 4-way arrow. So if we wanted to make these further apart, grab the nose, move it left to right. We can adjust the height of the nose and the width of the nose as well. So I'm going to make nose max length and as narrow as I can. Looks pretty good. I think we'll go from there. Click OK. Now you'll see this is going to be saved as a smart filter. Underneath smart filters, we have that effect that we just applied that we can toggle on and off. And this is the really cool thing about this is we can go in again. And make sure you don't click liquify at the top. That'll just reapply the same changes you made. You want to go down further and select liquify to actually get into here. So from here, what we could do is we could apply some bigger, more overall changes. So you'll see that the face sliders were kind of limited in how drastic you could go. But then we have all these tools here. We have the forward warp tool, which is like the main kind of pushing and pulling tool. We have some tools that I like here are the pucker tool and the bloat tool we'll be using. There's this clockwise one, smooth, reconstruct, push left tool, but I'm going to mainly be using this one. So if we wanted to go more towards that alien look, I'm going to use a big brush here. I think that helps a lot. The bigger the brush, the more of a like a large shift you're gonna make. So I would use bigger brush first, and then like little tweaks and details could be done with a smaller brush. Let's just push that alien look. We'll try to give him like high cheekbones, pushing right in under those cheekbones. You can always Control Z to undo. Excuse me. So what else do we want to do? I do want to move his chin up maybe a little bit. Move that kind of in. We're just going crazy with this just to show you what you can do with it. Let's see. We got the bloat tool. You can use that for things like the eye. You basically just click and hold and it'll enlarge. On the contrary, we have the pucker tool, which does the opposite. Click and hold. It kind of shrinks this down, so we could use that on the mouth as well. And then we got a pretty creepy portrait going on here. So let's click accept or click OK. Now, what's really cool here is you'll see we have two liquify effects applied under the smart filters. So if we undo the first one, it'll maintain the second edits we did, but get rid of or hide those facial edits that we did on the first step. So you can see it's a completely different look. So that's really interesting because you can kind of take off layers of this effect that you've done. So anytime you want to kind of save what you've done, just click OK and it'll save it in the smart filters. Then you can go back and do more if you want to make any more tweaks and be able to, you know, kind of save it and toggle it on and off. So those are some of the effects with the liquify tool. And we'll jump into our main portrait here. So first off, I know I saw some people in the chat. What's up, Ted and RB? I don't know if there was a question that I missed there. Let me see here. Scroll up a bit. If you guys have any questions, definitely let me know. Reminds me of a project I did while experimenting in Photoshop for class. Nice. Yeah, I think the liquify tool and this kind of stuff is pretty popular. I do want to say caricatures in general are kind of, you know, their own art, their own thing. Oftentimes when you're doing caricatures, the goal is to make the person still recognizable, but emphasize certain features. So if they have like a very prominent jaw or chin, or like eyes or nose or something that you want to accentuate, or just the shape of their head and you want to exaggerate it a little bit. Caricatures are often about exaggeration. So that's not really an example of what we did here. We just kind of distorted them all over the place. But if you're truly trying to do like a classic caricature and make the person still recognizable and get that likeness, that's something to think about, is like, what features do you want to exaggerate? So from here, we can go into our other portrait and we'll do something a little different here. What I want to do is make this a smart object. Well, actually, no, we'll remove the background first because we didn't remove the background for the first one, but it's always good to separate the background. It gives you a lot more flexibility. So let's select the quick selection tool, and then that will give us the ability to select subject here at the top. I'm going to click select subject. And then that actually looks like a pretty clean selection to me. I'm not too picky about this, so I'm just going to go ahead and mask that out. The little mask button down at the bottom of the layers panel. And then from here, I can do Control or Command Shift N, hotkey for a new layer. And I'll just do background, and I want to fill this in with some kind of background. You can do something like that. Maybe a little bit similar to what we had before. All right, so from here, we can go ahead and make this a smart object. So I'm going to right-click the layer here and do Convert to Smart Object and kind of repeat the process that we did before. So we can go into Filter, Liquify, and modify him. Now, we made the other portrait kind of alien-like, so I'm going to do like the opposite for him. I'm going to go into the Face tool here, and instead of like a narrow jaw, I'm going to really try to make that jaw more blocky. But play around with these so you can get a lot of different looks, combinations. Kind of take it whatever direction you think is fun. Widen that face a bit. See, there's like the jaw and then kind of this cheekbone one. Pull his brow down. I want to make his mouth wider, so I'm just going to grab that. Give him a larger mouth. We could even like push that upward a bit here. Widen out his nose. Shorten it a bit. I want to leave his eyes kind of small, but maybe we'll give him like a little tilt, a little sad tilt. And I think something like that is kind of a good starting point. So those are the facial edits. Like I said, these save under the Smart Filters section, but we could go in and push it even further. So what I want to do is go back into Filter and Liquify. Have you drawn caricatures before? I've done a few for a couple of events. Oh, nice. Very cool. No, I haven't done it kind of in that traditional sense. Like, people who do caricatures are so quick. I usually use like markers or something that makes these big marks very quickly. I've kind of drawn exaggerated portraits a ton. Like, I've definitely done that, but I've never done formal caricatures of people. But it is kind of a fun challenge. Like, artistically, how are you going to warp this portrait and still make it look like them? I wonder if these stock models ever see what we do with their photos. Yeah, that would be funny to come across your own face and be like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. So we're definitely gonna make this guy a character. I'm gonna use this forward warp brush here, and we're just gonna start pushing and pulling stuff. I want to really exaggerate that jaw. I'm gonna push in the head. We're gonna make his head smaller. So we're going for like a triangle shape, but with the big jaw. So I'm going to pull that out. We could even like push his head down a bit. You can see the bigger the brush is, the bigger overall drastic changes I can make. I might actually make him bulky too. I can move out his arms here. Now remember, if you overdo it or if you push this too far and it looks bad, you can either Control Z or you could just cancel it and redo it. So this might take a little bit of practice because sometimes it can be fairly easy to warp something to the point where it's like, all right, that looks, it doesn't look not realistic, but it just looks a little too distorted. And I'm making my brush smaller as I want to make smaller edits. But like I said, I find a larger brush helps you get more realistic edits. We could even use the pucker tool on the eyes a tiny bit. I'm just tapping it on the eyes real quick. Give them smaller eyes. Maybe the bloat tool if we want to give them like a bigger mouth. And you can adjust the size, the pressure, the rate, the density of these tools here in case you don't want it to be quite as drastic. So that's good. I think we've definitely distorted him quite a bit here. If we undo the first setting, we can see what those second edits look like by themselves without the facial edits that we made. So let's hide the first facial edits. And you can see it's like a completely different look. And in some ways, it actually almost looks more realistic somehow. I think it's just that really distorted jaw. So I think that looks pretty good. Let's see where we're at. From here, what we could do is we can go and apply any more adjustments that we want. If you want to keep warping this, definitely feel free. Every time you need to save it, you can just click OK and you get these separate effects under Smart Filters, so you have a lot of flexibility. But if you like this and you want to try to give it a stylized look, you could try to give this a classic caricature look by making it look painted or making it look drawn or something like that. So let me show you how to do that. We'll do kind of a painted look, and then if we have time, we'll do a drawn look. So what I want to do from here is I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this portrait 2. I'll put portrait 1 at the very bottom underneath the background, so I don't have to worry about that. Portrait 2 will duplicate this, and I'm just going to right click it and do rasterize. I'm just going to go ahead and confirm the liquify effects we have there. And then I'm going to right click this and do convert to smart object again, because we're going to apply some effects to this and I don't want a million effects stacked when I don't need it. So I'm going to go to filter, I'm going to go to filter gallery. And from here we could do something like the sponge effect. The dry brush effect is pretty good. You can see we're under the artistic panel, so you can play around with different filters, but I think the sponge is nice for kind of giving it this more simplified look. It's simplifying the colors in a lot of ways. And you can see I have the brush size maxed out to 10. If you take it down, it's, let me take it all the way down. Oh, the smoothness is all maxed out. So you can see what the brush size alone looks like at 0. And then at 10, it's just kind of bigger shapes, but I do want the smoothness cranked all the way up. I think that looks a little more painted. Definition, I'm just going to leave at 0. I don't like the effect that gives. Click OK. And then we can go to filter, stylize, and oil paint. And from here, you can kind of drag the preview. But, oh, we lost it. But anyway, I do like the settings: 7 for stylization, cleanliness at 10, scale at 0.1. The more you push stylization to the right, the smoother it gets. I don't like it quite at 10, but I think this looks pretty good. So from here, let's see. Oh, I just rendered it. We can go ahead and zoom in, and it can kind of show you these effects a little bit more. So let's zoom in here. This is the oil paint being toggled off. It kind of just softens that effect, but I think that looks pretty good from there. One thing I might want to do is apply a levels adjustment to this, but let's go ahead and try to make this look a little bit more painterly. So what I want to do from here is I might just want to start using the mixer brush and the paint brush to get more of a realistic texture. I have this brush here, and it's a textured brush, and if you have any brushes that you like, feel free to use them, but I'm just going to kind of do this. I'm going to gradate the background a bit. Maybe we'll actually fill in the background, I would say, with a mid-tone, and then what you can do from there is just kind of make some brush strokes at the top that are a little bit lighter, make some at the bottom that are a little bit darker, and just kind of get a gradient going here. Now, if you have a tablet, this is going to be a lot easier. But if you don't, I would recommend just using a really large brush size and a low flow on your brush settings. If you do that, you should be able to just kind of click around and have a slow buildup of the texture rather than these marks that look like this. I mean, you could do this too if you want that harsh texture, but if you want a little bit more gradual gradation to it, I would recommend just really lowering the flow and building that up. So I'm just going to get some quick texture. I don't want to spend too long on this, just so it looks more painted, because we're going to use the mixer brush next, and that's going to affect the background. It's a pretty destructive workflow. So I want to kind of get the background looking pretty good before I do that. Just going to try to get nice variety. A little bit of like texture and contrast so we can see the shapes change here. All right, that kind of looks a little textured, a little painterly. You could even look up stock images of this kind of thing. All right, so next what I want to do is I want to use the mixer brush. So I'm going to go above my portrait here, and I'm going to create a new layer. And we'll just call this mixer paint, or we can just call this paint. This is basically our new layer where we're going to do all the painting. So if you click and hold on the brush tool here, you'll get the mixer brush tool. And by the way, I do have, this brush pack is nothing special, but this textured brush I'm using, it's called Sampled Brush 1.3. If you go into the Discord and you search Sam's brushes, Sam's ''S brushes, you should get a link to this that would have that brush, just in case you do want it. But from here, what I'm doing is I'm using the mixer brush tool, and you'll see my settings at the top. You can kind of play around with these. I think that's the best way to see the effects they have, but the wet is at 34, the load is at 30, so basically wet and load are around 30. the mix is at 5, and the flow is at 18. I did this just because this gives me a little bit softer of an effect. So it's not too drastic. If you have higher settings, it's really going to push and pull the paint very drastically. But you can see there's kind of a faded look to this, which I like. I think it gives me some control. And the main thing I'm doing here is I'm just dragging it over the edge. I think it's the edge that often looks like a photo. It looks, it doesn't look hand painted because it's too sharp. So a lot of times paintings have a certain softness to them. So I'm mainly targeting the edges, especially like down here at the bottom, that shirt edge. That's not the focal point, so we could even let that become like softer. But any of these razor sharp edges around the outside, around the silhouette, I'm just going to drag it over in the direction of the edge. So up and down, left and right. And all it's doing is kind of softening that up. Anything that looks a little too sharp, like the sleeve. Oh, I also want to mention this really quick. These two settings here, I don't have it checked for load the brush after each stroke, but I do have it checked for clean the brush after each stroke. So that's also going to affect the look that you're getting. But anything like these sleeves, where the seam of the arm is, I might drag over that in the direction of the sleeve, just to soften that up. Looks a little bit more realistic. And the bigger your brush is, the more dramatic this effect will be. So I would stick with a fairly large brush size. If you're using very, very tiny brush strokes, the effect probably won't be very noticeable. That's why I'm staying zoomed out. I'm using kind of big brush strokes because I can see what it looks like from how the viewer will be seeing it. You could even make some of these drag out, kind of make it look smeared. So anything I think looks a little too photo realistic, I'm just gonna drag over it. You can see I'm doing this in a pretty loose way, which I think lends itself to kind of giving a painterly look. All right, let's zoom in a little bit more so we can actually see the face. So from here, I think the hair is really fun to do this on. We'll just kind of soften the hair, but you can do some brush strokes out and then scribble over them. Kind of gives you this blended paint look. You know, sometimes strokes out and do that. Just kind of a horizontal, vertical contrast. You can make your brush a little smaller where you need to. Brush stroke look can help. But I think that's pretty good. Just softening anywhere I want. I do it a little bit more in the hair here. All right. So I can zoom back out. I think that's pretty good. I can toggle that mixer paint on and off. And you'll see it's just a little bit more painterly now that we don't have those razor sharp edges everywhere. And again, you can go back and kind of paint over this manually as much as you want. I mean, you could start painting on it opaquely with like a normal brush and really give it a more illustrated look. But I think that looks pretty good. From here, I would probably want to create a canvas texture over the top. So I could try that. I have this asset. The thing about this particular asset, which I got off the free section of Adobe Stock, is I think it looks, let me see, multiply. I might just take the saturation down. I did Controller Command U for that. This is destructive, but I don't want any color. Though it is kind of nice, actually, that warm tone. You know what? I'm going to Control Z because I like that warmth. It's just that the texture is too much, so what I would probably do is take this out and put it in four sections, but there's probably going to be a bit of a seam, so you'd have to kind of take that time to line it up and make it seamless, which we don't have time for now, but I'll just put it on like this for now. Lastly, what I might want to do is group this portrait together, make a new adjustment layer, do levels, clip it to that group. It just looks a little dark to me, and I could brighten that up overall. So I'll probably make the canvas texture a little bit more to my liking. I'll post this on the Discord. If you want to do a drawn texture, you can go into the filter gallery here, and there's effects for, let's see, where's our Character. I was really wanting to say caricature. If you go into the artistic, you can see the paint ones we did, but if you go into sketch, you'll see charcoal, graphic pen, and photocopy. Now, if you look at a previous challenge we did let me see, what was it called? It was the illustrated composite effect. We went over creating a drawn effect a little bit, and I believe we used photocopy and then charcoal and then graphic pen, put those all on a multiply layer, and then kind of tweak the opacity of the ones that we wanted. So if you want to do a drawn effect, I'd play around with those. I'd check out the illustrated composite effect. But here's how you create a bit of a painterly effect. So we got that one, and let's see. We got our original one. So there's a couple different techniques that we got. Let me group these together. Okay, perfect. All right, so that's the effect. Thanks so much for joining, everyone. Definitely check out the Discord. This is where we post the challenges. I can give you feedback. You can get feedback from the community, and you can kind of share whatever you've done for these challenges. So definitely check that out, and I will see you all next time. Thanks so much, everyone.